Welcome back to Fast Gadgets. Today I'm going to do an installation of CentOS and also show some of the subtle differences between CentOS and Fedora. Before I get started, one thing I want to point out, I am going to do a virtual machine for this particular installation, but the thing about CentOS, although it is what you might consider the long-term support if you're interested in a Fedora operating system, so if you want an operating system that's Linux, that is based on the Red Hat, CentOS, Fedora type of OS, and you would prefer something with long-term support, you're going to really want to go with CentOS. But the one critical factor to keep in mind is that CentOS does not do very well support-wise with very modern hardware. So I've tried to install CentOS on my Lenovo Yoga 2, for example, and it really doesn't do well with hardware support. Fedora, on the other hand, does, because it's developed and supports newer hardware. So I'm going to start by clicking New, and we're going to type in CentOS, and I'm going to select, let's see if we can find it. If we don't have CentOS, we can easily select Red Hat, because it is essentially the same thing. Keep in mind that CentOS is it's the source code for Red Hat without the Red Hat logos, and then it's been recompiled, so it is essentially identical. So I'll just go with Red Hat 64-bit, and it recommends 768, but I'm really thinking I'm going to boost that up. I cannot see the entire display, so I'm going to delete. So I can't read all of the numbers here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete all of them and type in 2048 for 2 gigabytes of memory, and then I'll click Next. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new virtual hard disk, and I'll just leave it as a VDI. And I'm going to dynamically allocate. 8 gigabytes seems like it's really too small. I usually like to opt for somewhere between 60 to 80 gigabytes. So I'll set it for 60 gigabytes, then I'll go ahead and do Create. And when I click Start, I'm going to be prompted for the first time which operating system, which ISO do I want to use, and I do have the CentOS 7 x86 64 everything, so I'm going to use that one, and I will click Start. I'm going to adjust the scaling just a little bit, so I'm going to set the scale factor for 150 so it's a little bit bigger and you can see it better. And I can test the media, install the operating system, or do troubleshooting. I'm going to go with installing CentOS. Alright, so it's doing its startup, and at some point it should go into the graphical installer. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to change the scaling. I'm going to go down to, let's try 110. Yeah, much better. I'll try that again. Scale factor, we'll try 125. Looks pretty good. And by default, it has already selected for me English, which is perfectly fine. There we go. Sometimes it's hard to see when you're using scaling, it's difficult to see the buttons. As long as I can see those buttons on the bottom, I'm good with it. Yeah, see how the buttons just disappeared for scaling factor? So I'm going to go back to scale of 110. I also can do, if I do Control F, it takes me full frame. Really doesn't look much better, but we'll go ahead and leave it at that setting. And I'm going to click Continue. So there's a couple of things it wants to do. It's checking date and time right now. It's identified the time zone. No security policy is selected for right now. It knows what the installation source is. By default, it's going to do a minimal install, and I can alter that, so I can do pretty much whatever I want it to be. It could be an infrastructure server, file and print, web server, server with the graphical interface if you prefer. We can do the Gnome desktop, KDE, development and creative workstation. So there's a couple different options here. So if I want to, I can do Gnome. I can add other features, the Gnome applications, internet, some X Windows system compatibility. We'll do the Office suite, compatibility libraries, dev tools in case we want to compile anything. We probably don't need the security tools, but it probably won't take up very much room, so I'll click that as well. And then I'll say done. So it just wants to confirm. It already has the hard disk checked that this is where it's going to install, and it's going to go ahead and do automatic partitioning, which is fine. Alright, everything's ready. So I'll begin the installation. While it's doing the install, I'm going to go ahead and set my root password. And click done. And might as well create my user. I'm going to make this user an administrator, or in reality it'll be in etc sudoers. So this particular user would be able to do sudo bash, for example. This is just a way to automate the process of putting the user in etc sudoers and then adding them to the sudoers group or the wheel group, depending on which version of Linux you're installing. And I'll set the user password and then click done. And installation is going pretty well. So we're going to check out, once it gets finished installing, we'll check out the Gnome interface and see how it compares to Fedora 24. And I'm very curious to see which version. I'm guessing it is a 3X version, but I'm not sure which one. So we'll discover that, and then we're going to go ahead and run updates and find out how many updates it has. But before we do all that, I'm going to install the graphics drivers for VirtualBox so that we have a much clearer, easier to read display. Alright, installation is completed. Took about 30 minutes to do the install, which isn't too bad inside a virtual machine. This one's only got one core. I have a 2-core and 4 logical CPUs, so I might increase that to 2 CPUs. But let's go ahead and reboot it. And once the reboot is completed, I'm going to install the graphics drivers for VirtualBox, and performance should improve greatly. Wow, look how far back that kernel is. 3.10. Pretty old. Alright, I'm going to exit full screen. Kernel that I'm using on this system, 4.6.4 on Fedora 24. So, okay, so let me just change that view real quick. Whoops. I am going to scale this since it's just text. And this is a function of really Red Hat. So I'm going to do C to continue, I believe if you do Q to quit, it'll just keep prompting you. So let's try quit and see what happens. Okay, so we have to accept the license agreement, so I'll go back to no, and I'll do number 1 to enter the license information, and I'll do 2 to accept it. Alright, let's do continue. Alright, number 1. Number 2. Whoops, number 2. Okay, now it's got the X there. C to continue. This is not very intuitive. Alright. So I am going to change the view, change the scaling, and we'll go back down to 100. Now, what I want to do in devices, actually I don't even have to go there. I'm actually going to log on first. So let's get logged on. Yeah, it's not going to resize yet, but that's okay. And I'll check English, and then next, English for typing, and then start using CentOS. Now, I actually don't need this right now. I'm going to go to Devices and insert Guest Edition CD image. Okay, yes, I would like to install the guest editions. I have to give the root password to do that. Authenticate. And since I'm sitting here, let's change the profile preferences. I always like either white on black or gray on black, and then I usually turn on transparency somewhere around there. Alright, so it's building the modules. So this gives me some direct hardware support for drivers and other features and functionality. And I can do shared folder, which is nice to have, so I can drag items right from my real desktop onto this desktop. Alright, graphics libraries are being installed. I really like using VBox to do my testing for different operating systems. We talked a lot about the different OSs that I use. I've got Arch on here. I've installed Windows 8.1 with Office 2013, which I support for one of the colleges that I use, teach at and work at. I did a video which I have not released yet, but I will be releasing shortly on Windows NT 4.0 and how Windows NT 4.0 stands up today. Okay, so the installer is completed. I'll press enter. And I'm going to go ahead and alter that view, change the scaling back to 100. Yeah, the driver is not installed yet, so I'm going to go ahead and restart the system. See if I can remember my password. I'm being lazy, so I'll just do a reboot from the command line. Alright, well, let's get logged back into our system. And if I wanted to, I could change. I noticed by default it logs into Gnome Classic, but I'm going to switch it to Gnome because I prefer that. And we're going to compare it to Gnome on Fedora anyway. So we'll give it a second to boot up here. Alright, very basic. There are, I'm guessing, some tweak tools. Let's see if we can get... Yeah, we could Might already be installed. It is. Okay, so the Gnome tweak tool is already installed. And it actually has quite a few different themes. I didn't realize that it had so many themes. Let's check out and see if... but I do believe, yeah, fonts here has a much more gentle scale factor. So it's not all or nothing. So I'll scale it up a little bit larger so it's a little bit easier to read. Can we add extensions? Yes, we can. We can get more extensions if we want to. We already adjust the fonts. Can decide what to do with power when the lid is closed. Here on Windows, what I wanted to turn on. There we go. Now I've got all three buttons, and I am going to close the tweak tool and bring up command line. Interesting that I did have it set. Let's go back into profile preferences. Yeah, I did. I wonder. Doesn't seem to. It's like it's solid now after the drivers were installed. Curious. Oh, okay. So that's no transparency, that's full. There we go. I do like more transparency though. Less rather. Too much and you see too many things behind it. Okay, anyway. So here's our current kernel, which is quite old. And if we run rpm-q, we may be able to find out. Okay, rpm-qa. Let's grep on Gnome. So it looks like 3.14. So it's not that old. There is no DNF. So Dandified Yum, the newer Yum DNF, is not installed, so you have to use Yum, which isn't that bad. I actually prefer Yum, so depends how you see it. I don't consider this a bad thing. Let's do a Yum update and find out just how many updates there are. The PCI Ethernet is off by default, so you actually have to connect it. So we'll try that command again, an up arrow to run the command again. Now we'll go looking at the mirrors. I really wish CentOS did work okay on newer hardware because I would go ahead and use it. Fedora is awesome, but there are quite a few changes. You know, on the other side I say that, but the fact is with Fedora you get all the cool new updates. So that is the good thing about it, and I do enjoy that. If I stuck with CentOS, although it would be much more stable, I would definitely be missing some of the cool updates that are available. Okay, so it's got 234 packages to download and install, which is not really that bad. I expected it to be way more packages, honestly. I just did an update on Fedora 24 today, and I had 300 megabytes of updates, which in and of itself isn't that bad. But in addition to those updates, I got done running them, I rebooted, and was immediately told that I had another 28 updates. So you definitely get more updates in Fedora. It's what they call the experimental arm of Fedora Red Hat. So that's the cool thing. It's cutting edge, not bleeding edge, so that's a good thing. I'm curious to see what kernel this is going to go up to. I wanted to install, there we go, not install, run a new window. I thought it just flashed by that it was going to do another 3.1 kernel. I would have expected something a little bit newer. So while it's getting those updates, let's have a look and see what else we have on here. Let's check out settings. Looks very similar. Okay, I'm gonna go yes to install the updates. Looks very similar to the settings in Fedora 24. Let's see what we have for displays. Pretty much nothing, yeah. Yeah, I've currently got my tablet running in 1920 by 1080 because some of the applications that I use, like GIMP for example, just do not scale, so I really don't have any choice if I want to actually use it for anything. The downside to running in 1920 by 1080 is I have a 4K display, and the 4K display looks so much more beautiful in 4K, and I guess the things that I see are like the sharpness of the text. Just seems that much better when you're running it in 4K. Let's see what else we have here. What's installed by default? It looks like the usual applications. I really don't see anything so different. LibreOffice, Rhythmbox, utilities, odds and ends, video, weather. It looks nearly identical to Fedora 24. Now, of course, I've tweaked the toolbar so that it appears all the time using Fedi. Well, now that I say that, I didn't use Fedi. If I go to the back to the tweak tool, and I go to extensions and do get more extensions. I can use the same extensions. Now it says it can't detect a running version, but it should be able to. I'm going to do a refresh and usually the problem goes away. No, not this time, huh? Can't detect a running version of Gnome on the system, so some parts of the interface may be disabled. It might help once we get the updates done. I'm going to try a shift refresh. Still no. Well, let's see if I can install that dock tool. This is the one I want, but it's not going to let me turn it on because it doesn't think I have Gnome running. What else do we have? App installer. Looks, again, identical to Fedora 24. I think I've got the system pretty busy, so it's not really finding anything, and I'm running Yum, so this graphical interface might not work too well. Alright, so it's done the updates, it's already on cleanup, and we're going to do a reboot of this system. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna close this, close this. I'm gonna issue a power off, and okay, it's down. Go back into Oracle and go into the settings on this machine. Let's give it some more juice. So on system, RAM is good, processor, let's boost this thing. Let's give it 2. I want to leave the execution cap, although I'm a little bit nervous about that, so I usually cut this down just a little bit. Can't really see what it's putting in there, so I'll type in 90. Did it work? Yes. So 90% for execution cap. Acceleration we'll leave on. We'll go to display. We'll yank that right up to 128. One monitor. Scaling's fine. We can try. Yeah, we can't enable 2D, but we'll try and enable 3D acceleration. I wonder if I switch those, what would happen? No. Alright, well, we'll try 3D acceleration. And those extra cores should speed this system up a little bit. And I'm going to click Start. And I'm going to go full screen. So, fascinating to see we're still on the 3.1 kernel. I would like to say that kernel naming is different, but it doesn't seem likely. So I don't see a newer version of the kernel, which is really a surprise. I expected a newer one. It's been a while since I've run CentOS, so I mean, it's possible that that's it. They don't bother with a newer kernel. We'll get logged back in and we're going to run yum update again just to see if there's any post updates after the updates. VBox kernel service isn't working. I'm not sure what that's all about. Okay, so we'll go ahead and become root. And yeah, I don't think that kernel's updated very much. Okay, so let's do another yum update. Just see if there's anything new. No, there aren't. Interesting. Let's go ahead and run Firefox. Yes. At some point I gotta figure out how to make this permanently connected. I'll get to it someday. Anyway, I'm going to bring up the menu again and go to help. Whoops. Okay, that's curious. There we go. And do about Firefox. So we're on 45 now. Let's give those extensions a try again. I guess I could just leave it up. And tweak tool. I would think the tweak tool also would have been updated. Cruise over to extensions, get more extensions. Still can't detect it. That is strange. I didn't realize there was a disk usage tool at all. There we go. Interesting. Does it show me more info? Yes, it does. Oh, that's pretty cool. Alright, so it's querying the drive. Oh, that's really neat. So user lib 64. Oh, I like that. That's really neat. Lib, and of course user, which is the largest one. That's a nice tool. Alright, so there's CentOS installed. I'm going to see if I can figure out what the problem is with that tool, why I can't get extensions installed. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. I might try another browser or whatever. LibreOffice is installed. What version do we have? 4.3. Let's exit full screen. And we'll just move this over here a little bit. Alright, and let's find out. Okay, so I've got 5 here. Yeah. So a lot of the versions are much older of the different software that's installed in CentOS. Interesting. Yeah. So it took my mouse, which is fine. I'm gonna go full screen again. It is acting as if the graphical drivers for it might be the 3D that I enabled, but it's acting like the graphics driver isn't running right now. So I might turn that 3D option off. Let's have a look and see if Gnome was updated. Not really. It's still hanging around in version 3.14. Not that that's a big deal, but you're beginning to see what I'm saying. This is literally like a long-term support system, because you can get, I think it's 5 years of support on CentOS, and you know, things are not updated as rapidly. You know, if you want LibreOffice 5, you're going to have to go and do those installations for those tools, because they're not going to be there by default. So that's something to consider. So it does come with Word, Impress, which is like PowerPoint, Draw, Calc, Empathy, Gedit, a basic editor, OpenJDK. Did we look in Sundry? Firewall access, Orca, print settings, SE Linux troubleshooter, and we looked in utilities, the usual basic stuff. Now if I run software, let's find out if, yeah, now it's updating much better since it got the updates. One of my favorite tools is GIMP. I'm not going to install it now, but if I wanted to, I think I could. Now if I remove that, does it take me back? Yeah, it does. What kind of add-ons can we install? Different fonts? A lot of different fonts. Some of which are installed, many of which are not. Input sources. Let's go back. What else do we have? Well, let's look at internet. Thunderbird, remote desktop, featured, so it has different categories. What kind of web browsers do we have? Conquer. I don't even know if this will run correctly without KDE 4. What's other? KDE Bluetooth support. I don't have KDE installed right now, so I'm really not going to bother with that kind of stuff. How about system? What kind of utilities we have? Boxes is installed. I'm not a big fan of boxes. I would prefer VirtualBox. Of course, I don't need it because I'm inside of VirtualBox, but yeah. VirtualBox works so much better. Boxes is still very raw, so just to let you know. And other, tons of stuff in other. Anything that begins with a K usually is KDE Plasma related and may or may not run correctly if you don't have KDE Plasma installed. Text editors. Kwrite, it's a good one. Emacs, for those who like it. VI improved. Let's go ahead and see if we can install it. If you're going to get into Linux, launch. just be aware, you know, I'm going to quit out of this one. Quit. Whoops. There we go. Even though it's got, you can launch it and it had a file menu, it really doesn't have a file menu. Anybody who's used Linux long enough is familiar with VI. It's very basic, but it does work really well. When you're looking at configuration files, for example, now I wouldn't use VI necessarily. I would use less first to just look at a file. So right now we're just viewing the file, and then if I really wanted to edit, then I would use VI. The J key goes down, K goes up. I insert to insert text. Escape to exit insert mode. WQ if you want to write to the file. If you want to exit the file without changes, Q and exclamation point. So there's way more to VI. That's just the basics. But VI is on every single version of Unix and Linux. It's something you definitely want to get used to if you don't use it normally. I do recommend getting used to it in case you end up on a system that has a GUI only. Excuse me, a command line only. Alright, so that is, in a nutshell, CentOS. Again, very similar to Fedora 24. If I exit full screen here, see if we can get it to redraw correctly. There we go. Yeah, still resizing. With the tweak tool, I was able to add dash to dock and make the menu stay up, which I prefer. So we'll have to see how it goes. Should be able to do that at some point, but it is nearly identical as it is with Fedora. So, except Fedora, most of the files are brand new. They have the latest updates. So Gnome is 3.2x. If I run my kernel here, do a uname-r. I'm actually running 465. I may be going down to an older version of the kernel because I'm having some problems right now with flickering, and it ends up that it is a power issue with the kernel, so it's trying to do a power save, and it's causing some flickering that comes up every once in a while, which I've mentioned in a previous video. So check out my Linux related playlist on YouTube if you want to see those. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. This is just a quick look at CentOS. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.